Hello, in tonight's revision tutorial, I'm going to go over how to paint a mesh in Blender. And then, you could use that in Unity, because that's what I do on this channel. I make games in Unity. So, simplest instruction is you have this cube, right? Let me make it even simpler. I'm going to get rid of the camera and the light. I just have the cube, and I want to change the color of the cube. So I will press Texture Paint, and then the screen shows two different windows now. It shows this window here with the mesh, and this window with the UV mapping, and it would be an image there. Over here in the window with the mesh, there is this tools icon selected, and it says that right now the material is being used. There's no textures. If I were to draw on the mesh with my little brush, nothing happens. Let me change this to use an image for what's going to be on the mesh. So I say from material to image, and then I'll create a new image, and I'll just call it cube texture, and I'll save it. Okay. And now when I draw the white, I could actually draw on the cube. Okay. So I could change the colors here, and I could draw on the cube here. I could change the size of the brush, make it very small, so I could do my name. All right. And when I'm drawing here, it shows up here. If I draw over here, let's see what this happens. If I do a letter D5, where does D5 show for that face? Where are you, D5? Right there. So I could either draw on either side, and the mesh updates. Now, what else? Say I want to draw just a face, and I just want to color one of the faces, and I'm very difficultly going through here, but you can see sometimes it stretches over and gets over to the other side. I could just draw one face at a time. I switch to edit mode. I pick the face I want to draw on, so let's make sure I got face select on. I pick a face. Let's see, let's pick the top. Let's pick this one here. Let's pick this face. Then I go back to paint mode, and I select this mask button. Bam. Now you see this is the only one that didn't get ghosted over. This is the face I could draw on. And I'll pick a color. And let me put the radius back up. And I could, ooh, it's big. And I could draw with that color, full strength, or I could, here's the other thing I could do is the strength of the color. So I could fade, a little bit, and do soft things like that instead of just having a hard color. Do 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 do. So it's like an airbrush, and I could just color a face. Okay. So again, to color just a face, I go to edit mode. I select the face or faces I want to color in. Then I go back to texture paint mode. I pick the color that I want to color with, and then I just paint. And let me put the strength back up to max. Then I can just paint, and it only paints those faces. Right? So this is a simple cube, but if you had a more complicated mesh, you could want to just color in the faces. In the end, I go to edit mode, I'm going to select nothing. Well, when I go to edit mode, it's not showing the texture here. That's because, let's switch the rendering for the model here to the material renderer. And it's not showing the texture there. So let's go to material. And here we have a material for the cube. And here it's using a base color right now. This is another way you could color your mesh, but it just colors the entire mesh, not face by face. Now, instead of using a base color for the material, I could switch from using a base color to using an image. And you know what I'm going to use? I'm going to use this image. And I'll say open. Where did I save that image? Oh, I didn't save this image yet. So here it says image with a star, means it's not saved yet, or there's been changes, and it's not saved the changes. So I'm going to go here and say save as. Go to my desktop, and I'll just, what am I going to call this? QB. And I'll save it to my desktop. So now, over here, on this side, I come back to the material that I said I want it to be an image, and I could open that image, QB, and boom, there it is. It's on the cube. So this is one way to, color my mesh, this very simple cube mesh. And then when I save things, like one, I'll have to save the image out. That's going to be my texture. I'd save that. and then I save the model out, File, Export, FBX. I'll save the model as an FBX to my desktop too, and I'll click Apply Transform. Okay, I only need the mesh. I want to apply transform so when it goes into Unity, things are pointing the right way. And QB, and I say export the FBX. So I exported the image and it exported the FBX. So now, let's see. Now we have the image and the FBX. Okay, and just to show you, I could take these two things into Unity. Here's like a Unity thing. Here's my assets folder. I'll drag my FBX into my assets. I'll put in the FBX folder. And I'll drag my image into my textures folder. All right. Now when I look in the FBX folder, I have QB, and he has the texture. So remember, you got to drag the image and the FBX so that you could have your model with the with everything, with the textures and the colors. All right. Okay, so that's way number one. Let me delete QB. Well, I have to do everything right now. Let me close that. Now, a second way to color a mesh is with a palette. So here, this image was being mapped onto the mesh. And then for every game object, I guess I'd have to have another texture. There's benefits to this because I could scribble and write, on each face. There's benefits to this, but the con to this is you'll have to have a texture for each object. Well, each type of object in your game. Because I could have this cube in my game like 10 times, but it's still using the one texture. Anyway, so for the other way, let's do this now. Let's start this other method. So let's do a new project for the second method of painting. And in my second object, I kind of made a more complex game object. So let me delete these, the camera, the cube, and the light. So I have nothing. And now I'm going to import an FBX that I made. And this FBX is on the desktop. It's the Robot Man. Okay, so here I have the Robot Man. And now I'm going to color in the Robot Man. I'm going to paint him up using a color palette instead of the texture paint. So instead of pressing texture paint, I'm going to press UV editing this time. And think, what do we got to do? Well, let's open up the palette. The palette. Oh, I got rid of the palette. Okay, I'm going to have to find it again. Pictures? Where is it? Palette. Okay, I have a palette here. And let me save it in a new spot. Let me save it on my desktop. Palette. Ooh, I spelled it wrong. Maybe I still spelled it wrong, but whatever. I'm saving it like that. So I have this image saved here. And then on this side, I have the object selected. And I have to go to edit mode. And there is some kind of UV editing here. You see this here highlighted? It's kind of messed up. So let's just do a smart UV project with all the faces selected. Let me select all the faces. I could press A to make sure they're all selected. And then I'll go to UV editing, smart UV project. I could change the angles. I'm going to just make it a little less here. And then say OK. And now the mapping is here on this color palette for all the stuff. My technique, I want the entire mapping to fit into one cube, one color cube here. So I'm going to shrink down all the mapping to fit one cube, and it's not going to matter about any kind of details because I'm going to map the faces using colors. So it's not going to matter about detail, right? So right there it's on green. So over here, let's see this guy. Let's go to the material button, and here's a material. What about this part? To say that I want to use a material to map to him. Well, here it has the base color. See, I can change the base color of the material 01, or I could change material 01 to use an image, and then I'll have to open the image I want it to use on my desktop, palette, open image. Okay, so now he's all that color, or I can move him and pick him to all be a different color. So, okay, let's make him naked over here. Like, all right, and then now we could color in parts of things that I'm going to say are his clothes. So let's see what we got here. let's give him a shirt. Let me just select the faces. Oops. Like this. And then I can get the rest of this here. I'll select all the faces. Like if it's a shirt. Alright, so I think right here too, I want this part. Bam, like if it's a shirt. Those faces are selected, then I go to, well, I don't have to go to texture paint. Those faces are selected, and here they are selected on the palette, the image map that is a palette. And let's make his shirt blue. So I'll just drag his shirt to the blue swatch color. All right, there, now his shirt's blue. Let's give him some pants. So let's select those faces. And what color is the pants? They're like jeans. Maybe they're brown. Okay, so now we got that. We got brown. And there we go. We kind of colored him in like that. And he's not wearing any shoes. Okay, so now if I, same kind of thing. I have to make sure that this palette is saved. So I'll just say image and save. And it's palette PNG on my desktop. And then for the mesh, I will say file, export, FBX, just a mesh, apply the transform. I don't have any animations. And I'll call this Robot Man. And I'll put on my desktop, Robot Man FBX. Oops, so let me just call this Robot Man 2 FBX and export it. Okay, so I exported the texture and I exported the mesh. Now I go into Unity. And once again, let's see, here is the texture. I'll put that in my texture folder. And here is the FBX, Robot Man 2. And I'll put that in my FBX folder. And if I look, here is Robot Man. Oops, and it looks, oh, there he is. He's standing up. There you go. Robot Man. And the forward is the front, like that. Yeah, when you're modeling in Blender, the front, when I'm making a model in Blender, let me go back to the layout view. When I'm making a model in Blender, you see the axes here? Positive Y is the back, and negative Y is the front. So that when I come into Unity, the Z forward is facing the right way for the model, okay? So that's 2 ways to paint your mesh. Thank you very much.